Good morning. Today is Wednesday, November 6th, and this is The Drill. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today because I'm the only one who makes the presumption for the status quo. I'm not a professional, I'm not a professor, lawyer, or doctor. I am an honorably discharged Air Force veteran with an associate's degree, a baby boomer, and a registered independent. Today I'm going to read an article from AMAC magazine and then read a rewrite of the same article when I come back. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The article from AMAC magazine is the latest edition, the October edition of AMAC magazine, is titled, "Who's Going to Pay for It? America's Disillusioned Youth Turn to the Freebies of Socialism." Socialism is gaining support among America's younger generation. Many who support socialism, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have rebranded it as, quote, democratic socialism, unquote, perhaps in an attempt to distance themselves from the negative connotation the world holds in the mind of the average American. The reality is that does not change the definition at all. The dictionary defines socialism as, quote, a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. 61% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 view socialism in a positive light, according to a January 2019 Axios poll. The majority of America's youth view socialism as a means for social justice and view capitalism as only benefiting people of privilege. Our youth's support for wealth redistribution is also evident in a Harris poll, which found that a large majority of youth, millennials, and Generation Z are more likely to embrace socialism and the policies associated with it than past generations. According to the poll conducted in February 2019, 73.2% of millennials and Generation Z believe government should provide universal health care, and 67.1% think college should be tuition-free. It is clear that socialism sounds better as a concept to younger people compared to those 50 and older. Whether these positive narratives about socialism have their beginnings in high school or college, reinforced by media or other institutions, we must educate our youth on the dangers inherent in that form of government and social structure. History shows socialism has failed throughout the world in all its forms, including Marxism-Leninism in the Soviet Union, Maoism in China, state socialism in India, democratic socialism in Sweden, and National Socialism in Nazi Germany. These countries have been forced to adopt capitalistic measures to counterbalance the mess created by socialism. Now there's private ownership of railroads and airlines in the United Kingdom, special economic zones in China, and open markets and foreign investments in Sweden. Time and time again, socialism has created governments more powerful than the people they purport to serve. America didn't become the greatest nation on the globe by chance. We arose to become the world's top superpower through hard work and rugged individualism. Capitalism invigorates an individual rise to the greatest economic heights through the fundamental but currently jeopardized right for businesses and citizens to reap the fruits of their labor. Socialism has never brought prosperity and instead encourages a people to embrace mediocrity. That leaves our country vulnerable to new enemies, foreign and domestic. The positive narratives offered about socialism, touted by Bernie Sanders and the like, resonate well with a generation told that their struggles are not their fault, but are instead caused by the system, quote unquote. The millennials are the first generation set to be worse off than their parents. The cost of college has doubled since 1996, and healthcare costs similarly have ballooned. Moreover, most young Americans no longer have access to the pensions their parents or grandparents relied on. It's no wonder, then, that the promise of free health care and free college sounds too good to pass up. And while many young Americans have some sort of side jobs, these wages are not keeping up with rising costs. It's sad but true that far too many young Americans are struggling to make ends meet. It should come as no surprise, then, that the Heritage Foundation reported that roughly 2 million people under age 30 voted for Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders in the 2016 presidential election. Quiet underground socialists are a thing of the past. The people who desire a shift towards socialism are outspoken about their beliefs. Sanders placed himself in the middle, in the midst of the young people struggling under college debt and promised them free college health care and racial, economic, and climate justice. Sanders' solution on how to pay for it all is to tax the rich. The problem many young people face is the disillusionment created by these democratic socialists. They believe that those who would have worked hard and become successful are to blame for many of the country's problems. Rather than celebrating the hard work that leads to the American dream, Sanders and politicians like him condemn that dream unless it is handed out freely to all who want it. That may sound heavenly, but history shows conclusively that whenever that type of radical change was attempted, the result was failure. Socialism is not only responsible for crumbling economies, it's also responsible for more than 100 million deaths. Harvard University Press published research in the Black Book of Communism that documents the awful truth that in each and every Marxist socialist regime, the only way to gain power was through the death of others. While socialism's written ideals are understandably tempting for America's frustrated youth, reality paints a far less pleasing picture. Socialism's goal has always been to shift power away from people toward a central government, ultimately destroying the successes of the working class. The truth behind socialism isn't the sudden availability of free things and a classless society of joy and harmony. It's that the ideology simply doesn't work. That is, except for the dictators behind so much death and destruction. It doesn't take a degree from Harvard Kennedy School of Government to recognize that socialism is not the solution. And that was the article from AMAC magazine written by Ben Ferguson, who's an author, TV political commentator, and host of the daily Ben Ferguson Show and podcast. So when I come back, I'm going to read a rewrite that I did to improve this article rhetorically, at least, when I come back. Thank you. This is the same article that I just read, but written the way I think it could have and should have been written. It doesn't take a degree from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government to recognize that socialism sucks. While socialism's sweaty little fantasies are understandably tempting, reality paints an ugly picture. The truth about socialism is that it only works for mass-murdering dictators. Socialism is not only an economic disaster, but is also responsible for 100 million deaths worldwide. The problem is that many people buy into the malevolent universe premise and believe that successful people must have gotten that way by getting lucky, cheating, or a combination of the two. This faulty premise is responsible for the hatred of the successful for being successful and the subsequent demand that they, quote, give back, unquote. It should come as no surprise, then, that the Heritage Foundation reported that roughly 2 million brainwashed people under the age of 30 voted for Bernie Sanders in the last presidential election. It's sad but true that far too many young Americans that are struggling to make ends meet blame society instead of themselves. Bernie Sanders and the like resonate well with a generation brainwashed to accept determinism, told that their struggles are not their fault, but are instead caused by the system, quote unquote. While it's true that millennials are the first generation set to be financially worse off than their parents, that is the fault not of the status quo, but of the progressive changes made by the left in this country. Keynesian economics, an increasing minimum wage, and health care that is run by insurance companies instead of doctors and patients. It's a pretty good racket for socialists, create society's problems, and then claim to be the solution for those very same problems. The United States of America didn't become the greatest nation on the globe by chance. We arose to become the world's top superpower through the hard work of rugged individualism. Capitalism invigorates an individual rise to the greatest economic heights through the fundamental but currently jeopardized right of businesses and individuals to reap the rewards of their labor. Reversing the socialistic trend in this country involves, quote, going back, unquote, going back to reality, certainty, morality, and beauty. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. In conclusion, I've read two different versions of the same article from AMAC magazine. One written an article written by Ben Ferguson in AMAC magazine and edited to improve it by myself. Who is the true conservative? He's the person that understands that conservatism is not just about politics, but culture as well. He is not selfish, but minds his own business. He acts like an adult. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He expresses what he knows and does so with absolute certainty. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He is open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American, and he is better than the socialist. He is a better friend, father, brother, family member, and a better person, period. You have to know that. If you don't know with every fiber of your being that being a true conservative is best, then you are wasting your time. And all that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. Remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win. True conservatives know that nothing is inevitable. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.